Okay, today we begin with a simple but powerful image. Imagine your soul as a piece of white cloth. Every thought you allow in, every emotion you cultivate, is like a drop of dye sinking into the fabric. Over time, the colors deepen, spreading across every fiber, shaping what the soul becomes. Welcome to Stoic Dharma, a place where ancient wisdom meets the search for inner peace. Today we explore one of Marcus Aurelius' most enduring insights. The soul becomes dyed with the color of positive thinking. Together, we'll see how Stoic philosophy, timeless wisdom, and daily mindfulness can transform the way we live and see the world. In our modern world of restless scrolling, constant noise, and endless comparisons, it's easy to feel that our fabric is stained with worry, anger, or despair. But what if the colors we choose are different? What if the dye is gratitude, resilience, or compassion? Marcus Aurelius did not write his reflections in a palace, surrounded by ease and music. He wrote them in the quiet hours of the night, often on the edges of military campaigns where the air carried iron and damp soil. His meditations are the voice of a man weighed down by responsibility and loss, fully aware that each sunrise could bring defeat or betrayal. Yet in the middle of that turbulence, he offered words that endure. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. This was not the optimism of a sheltered ruler. It was the clarity of a Stoic emperor who understood that life would not soften for him simply because of a crown. Wars raged, plagues spread, enemies plotted. He knew he could not bend the storms of fate, but he could bend his own mind towards strength, compassion, and discipline. In this lies the essence of Stoicism. Reality is shaped not by what happens to us, but by how our thoughts interpret it. Now imagine the Rome of his time, an empire at its height yet fraying at its edges. Soldiers held frozen frontiers, whispers of rebellion echoed, and citizens longed for stability. In the middle of this, Marcus carried on a constant dialogue, not with generals, but with his own soul. His meditations were never meant for public eyes, they were private notes, a daily mindfulness practice to keep his spirit steady. For the Stoics, thoughts were not shadows passing by, but seeds. Whatever you plant in the soil of the mind will grow and eventually shape your character. Plant anger, and you harvest bitterness. Plant gratitude, and you harvest peace. Epictetus reminded his students that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they form about them. This truth echoes in Marcus's image of the dyed soul. When he spoke of dye, he drew from an image familiar to Roman craftspeople. Cloth was not instantly colored, it had to be dipped repeatedly until the fabric held the hue. So too with the mind. A single positive thought does not transform us, but repeated practice of resilience, compassion, and clarity slowly changes the soul. This was Stoicism, not a single lesson, but a daily immersion. Now picture our modern world. The battlefields have shifted from Roman frontiers to the glow of screens. Instead of swords, we face deadlines, emails, notifications, and the constant comparison of our lives against curated images. Our days are dyed not with smoke and iron, but with negativity, distraction, and doubt. Here the question Marcus leaves us with becomes urgent. In such an environment, how do we choose the colors that seep into our soul? Stoic philosophy offers a bridge between chaos and calm. The outer world may never quiet down, but the inner world remains ours to protect. Thoughts are never neutral. They leave traces, shaping habits and character. What we repeat, resentment or gratitude, envy or wonder, becomes the dominant color of our soul. Imagine waking and immediately reaching for your phone. Within minutes you absorb anger, fear, or shallow comparisons, already stained by others' colors. Marcus Aurelius, though without Wi-Fi, would have understood. Guard the gateway of your mind, for every thought is a dye that colors the soul. This is why the Stoics spoke of the mind as a fortress. Just as a commander does not let enemies walk through the gates, you must not allow unexamined thoughts to march inside. This does not mean denying pain. It means pausing, observing, and asking, what color is this thought? Does it darken the soul or does it bring light? Daily mindfulness, in this sense, becomes a practice of self-cultivation. Resistance always arises. The mind, left to habit, gravitates toward anxiety or self-criticism. Negativity feels natural because it has been repeated, dyed in layer after layer. Yet Marcus reminds us, with patience, new colors can be introduced. Gratitude practiced daily feels natural over time. Compassion chosen consistently no longer feels like effort. The dye of positive thinking is not quick, but it is lasting. Consider how this unfolds in work. A difficult project arrives, criticism sharpens. Instinctively, frustration colors the soul. But what if instead you ask, how can this sharpen my focus, strengthen my patience, or remind me of impermanence? This is not denial of hardship, it is transformation of its meaning. In relationships too, the choice of dye matters. A harsh word can leave a permanent stain of resentment, repeated endlessly in memory. Yet the Stoic lens offers another path. What if the color chosen is understanding, recognizing that others carry their own storms? What if the soul is dyed with forgiveness instead of anger? The pain remains, but the soul is not discolored by it. And in solitude, the dialogue with ourselves is decisive. Seneca observed that the greatest empire is mastery over the self. Here, in silence, we apply the deepest dyes. The stories we tell ourselves of failure, hope, or worth determine how we appear when tested in public. Marcus knew this well. His meditations were not speeches for others, but private exercises in choosing the color of his own soul. Centuries of wisdom can be distilled into a single daily question. What colors are you adding to your soul today? The world will not stop offering noise or pain, but it cannot prevent you from choosing. Every act of gratitude, every mindful breath, every decision to transform bitterness into compassion becomes another stroke of dye. Slowly, the soul becomes radiant, not because life was gentle, but because the mind chose its colors with care. The challenge Marcus left still confronts us today. In a world of constant scrolling and invisible pressures, how do we protect the whiteness of the soul from despair? And even more, how do we actively choose resilience, gratitude, and compassion to dye our inner life? The answer, as Marcus would remind us, is found in daily practice. For the colors we carry within eventually shape the life we live without. Marcus Aurelius was not merely a name etched in marble or a face on Roman coins. He was a man carrying the immense weight of an empire while searching for clarity within himself. To the world, he was a commander, legislator, and the last of what history would later call the 5 good emperors. To himself, he was a student of philosophy, a soul constantly tested by circumstances far greater than personal desire. In the stillness of his campaign tent along the Danube frontier, he wrote lines that were never meant for public acclaim. These meditations were private reminders, a dialogue not with the Senate or the people, but with his own restless thoughts. He did not see himself as a teacher, but as a flawed man striving to practice Stoic discipline, to remain calm, virtuous, and steadfast despite the storms outside. Here lies the heart of his lived philosophy. Marcus was not writing abstractions. He was reminding himself that the mind is sovereign. Armies could rebel, fate could take his children, and Rome itself could fracture. Yet if his thoughts remained ordered and aligned with reason, he could not truly be defeated. This is why the phrase, "the soul becomes dyed with the color of positive thinking," carries such force. It was not a reflection of privilege, but a tool for survival. Imagine the burden of being both emperor and philosopher. Every decision rippled across millions of lives. A single misstep could change the fate of provinces and generations. Yet in his solitude, Marcus realized his first duty was not to Rome, but to his own soul. Only a well-ordered mind could serve wisely. Only a dyed soul, colored by clarity, patience, and virtue, could resist the temptations of power and the corrosions of fear. Marcus did not stand alone. He was part of a lineage of Stoic voices stretching from Greece to Rome. Epictetus, once a slave, told his students with urgency that external freedom meant little without inner freedom. Events themselves do not disturb us, he taught. It is our judgments that shape our suffering. His insight flows directly into Marcus' metaphor. The dye that colors the soul comes not from the fabric of the world, but from the judgments we allow within. Seneca, the statesman and philosopher, took the thought further. He argued that the true refuge of a person is within their own mind. Palaces and wealth cannot guarantee peace. Only when the mind is trained to rest in itself, disciplined in thought and intention, can storms lose their sting. For Seneca, this inner fortress was the one place untouched by fortune. Marcus, through his meditations, built the same refuge word by word. Together, these Stoic voices form a constellation. Emperor, freed slave, and advisor to power each reach the same conclusion. The quality of life depends on the quality of thought. The dye of the mind determines the color of existence. But Marcus's reflections were shaped not only by philosophy, but by hardship. He honored Rome's gods, observed rituals, and lived in a world torn by war, plague, and betrayal. He buried children, endured conspiracies, and faced endless unrest. In these conditions, his words about positive thinking are not sentimental but radical. They tell us that even in grief, the soul can be dyed with patience. Even in despair, it can be dyed with resilience. Even in loss, it can be dyed with gratitude for what once was. This reframes positivity. Today, we often see it as denial, a coat of optimism hiding deeper wounds. For Marcus, positivity was not denial, but reinterpretation. A soldier's death was not meaningless suffering, but a reminder of life's brevity and the nobility of duty. A plague was not only devastation, but a test of compassion and courage. In Stoicism, positive thinking is not blind hope. It is the deliberate choice to see every event as raw material for virtue. This is why Marcus's wisdom endures. His life proves that positivity is not naive, but strategic. It is resistance against despair, discipline against chaos. The world cannot be controlled, but the mind can. Once the mind is steady, the soul is steady. Once the dye is chosen, the fabric reflects its color. This insight reaches into our own daily struggles. At work, politics and pressure tempt us to frustration. Epictetus whispers, "You cannot control others' behavior, only your judgments." In relationships, harsh words sting and linger. Seneca reminds us that true refuge lies in our own capacity for patience and compassion. In daily life, constant comparisons and noise overwhelm us. Marcus urges us, the soul is always being dyed. Choose the color carefully. Adopting this as practice transforms life. Instead of waking to dread or distraction, begin each morning by recalling that your mind is sovereign. Instead of allowing resentment to stain your day, choose gratitude. Instead of letting fear dye your soul gray, choose courage even in small acts. It is not quick, but with repetition the color holds, just as cloth steeped many times takes dye more firmly. This daily discipline sustained Marcus Aurelius through decades marked by war, political intrigue, personal loss, and the crushing responsibilities of empire. What gave him strength was not fortune or privilege, but the repeated practice of turning his thoughts toward resilience, gratitude, and virtue. He was not alone in this insight. The voices of Epictetus and Seneca echo alongside his own, reminding us that while the world remains unpredictable, the mind can be trained. And within that training lies a quiet freedom, the ability to remain steady when everything else wavers. Within that training lies peace, the capacity to choose patience over anger, compassion over cruelty, and clarity over confusion. Within that training lies the ultimate power, the power to decide what colors our souls will carry. So the question that once guided Marcus in his lonely frontier tent still confronts us today. What color will you choose? Each thought leaves its mark. Over time, the soul reveals the palette we return to most. The wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca was never meant to remain in books or carved on stone tablets. It was designed to be lived. For the Stoics, philosophy was not a lofty abstraction, but a daily practice, as practical as sharpening a tool, as necessary as taking a breath. To speak of the soul being dyed with thought is to speak of choices made in the flow of ordinary life, in work, in relationships, and in the quiet of the mind. In the realm of work, modern life often feels like a battlefield of expectations. Emails multiply, deadlines tighten, and the pressure to perform can dye the soul with anxiety. Stoic philosophy offers an antidote. Positive thinking here is not denial of stress, but the art of transforming stress into material for growth. By focusing on solutions rather than problems, you align with the Stoic principle that what matters is not what happens, but how you respond. Now imagine entering your workplace with the mindset of Marcus Aurelius. Obstacles are not threats, but training grounds. A sharp remark from a colleague becomes a chance to practice patience. A failed project becomes a lesson in humility. A crowded schedule becomes a reminder that time is precious and must be spent wisely. In this way, the dye of the soul deepens not with resentment, but with perseverance and wisdom. From here, we turn to the realm of relationships. Every human connection, with family, friends, colleagues, or strangers, reflects the state of our inner life. When we carry bitterness, that shade inevitably seeps into our words and actions. But when we nurture gratitude, compassion, and understanding, those colors brighten our interactions, making them healthier and more enduring. For the Stoics, positive thinking was not about ignoring flaws in others, but about seeing them as fellow travelers wrestling with struggles of their own. Imagine a moment of conflict with someone close. The natural impulse is to defend, to retaliate, to let anger dye the soul. Yet Stoicism asks us to pause and choose differently. What if patience became the color of this moment? What if we responded with understanding, remembering that this person too carries unseen burdens? With this shift, relationships can turn into spaces of healing rather than battlefields of resentment. Perhaps the deepest practice, however, lies within, in the silent dialogue no one else can hear. Seneca called the mind a refuge, and Marcus Aurelius urged himself to guard the inner citadel. In solitude, repeated thoughts gradually dye the soul. Self-criticism leaves it heavy and dark. Gratitude renders it lighter, warmer, and resilient. From here we explore practical ways to cultivate Stoic positive thinking. The first is a gratitude journal. Each day, take a few minutes to record moments of appreciation, no matter how small: a meal, a kind word, sunlight after rain. Over time, these entries dye the soul with gratitude until it becomes the dominant hue. The second is Stoic self-dialogue. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not for an audience, but for himself. You too can write or reflect daily reminders that align the mind with resilience and calm. These are not blind affirmations, but reasoned reflections. This moment is heavy, but it will pass. My response can still be noble. The third is what we might call the challenge of replacement. When a negative thought arises, self-doubt, envy, anger, replace it with a constructive question. Instead of "why me?" ask, "what can I learn from this?" Instead of "this person is unbearable," ask, "what chance do I have here to practice patience?" Negativity does not vanish, but it becomes raw material for growth. Over time, these practices transform the fabric of the soul. A gratitude journal may feel small at first, but after months the soul has been dipped daily in appreciation. Stoic dialogue may feel forced, but gradually becomes a natural voice of resilience. Replacing negative thoughts with constructive questions may seem awkward, yet slowly rewires the mind itself. Like cloth in dye, the soul changes not in an instant, but through repeated immersion. In the workplace, this means fewer days lost to despair and more energy directed toward solutions. In relationships, it means fewer conflicts fueled by misunderstanding and more moments dyed with patience and empathy. In solitude, it means less dwelling in fear and more resting in peace. This is Stoic philosophy in motion, ancient wisdom becoming daily mindfulness, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. But Stoic positive thinking carries a deeper dimension. It is not merely about personal happiness. It prepares the soul for service to others. Marcus Aurelius ruled not for himself, but for the stability of millions. Epictetus taught not for his own freedom, but to guide others toward liberation. Seneca wrote not only for his peace, but to offer readers a map through chaos. The colors we choose for our soul inevitably spread outward, touching everyone we encounter. So when you practice gratitude, you strengthen not only yourself, but the spaces you share. When you cultivate Stoic dialogue, you calm your mind and model wisdom in moments of conflict. When you replace negativity with growth, you create ripples of strength for those silently watching. Positive thinking in Stoicism is never isolated. It is communal, shaping the atmosphere around us. The question then becomes deeply personal. What daily practices will you choose? What colors will you immerse your soul in? Each day is an opportunity to begin again, to dip once more into the dye of positive thinking. And with each repetition, the soul becomes more resilient, more compassionate, more aligned with timeless wisdom. So let the pressures of work be teachers of patience. Let relationships be classrooms of compassion. Let solitude be a sanctuary of clarity. In every arena of life you carry the brush, the dye, and the choice. And with each thought, the soul becomes what it was always meant to be, a canvas of strength, beauty, and peace. The journey through Marcus Aurelius' West Reflections brings us to a profound but simple truth. The soul is like fabric, and our thoughts are the colors that give it life. Every choice, every judgment, and every emotion leaves its mark. Over time, the repeated patterns of thinking create the dominant shades that shape who we become. Positive thinking, then, is not about turning away from reality or pretending hardship does not exist. It is about engaging with life's struggles through the lens of strength, resilience, and clarity. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in the solitude of his tent, with war raging around him, he was not running from the world outside. Instead, he was deliberately painting it with the colors he wished his soul to carry. Despair was always close at hand, yet he refused to let it define him. He chose patience in the face of frustration, courage in the shadow of fear, and perspective in moments of chaos. This is the essence of Stoic philosophy. Reality will always remain as it is, beyond our control. But the meaning we draw from it, the way we live within it, depends entirely on the colors with which we choose to dye our thoughts. From here, we can see that transformation is not a single event. It is an ongoing immersion. Just as cloth does not become richly dyed with a single dip, the soul is shaped through repetition. Daily mindfulness, consistent reflection, and steady practice allow the colors of resilience, gratitude, and compassion to deepen until they cannot be washed away. Now imagine your own life as a canvas in progress. Each day you add brush strokes, some dark, some bright. Negative thoughts may create heavy shades, but they are not the final picture. By returning again and again to gratitude, by practicing patience, by choosing perspective, you slowly create a masterpiece that reflects the best of who you are. This does not mean ignoring pain or pretending that everything is fine. The Stoics never taught denial, they taught courage. Positive thinking in their philosophy is not a fragile optimism, but a resilient realism. It acknowledges the storm while also noticing the light breaking through the clouds. It accepts difficulty without surrendering to despair. Consider how this approach transforms daily life. When frustration arises at work, instead of letting it define your day, you ask how it can shape your patience. When conflict arises in relationships, instead of letting anger stain the moment, you choose to see it as a chance to deepen compassion. Each moment becomes an opportunity to add a new shade to the soul. There is also a long horizon in this practice. If today you choose even a single thought of gratitude, you may not notice much difference. But repeat it for a year, and gratitude becomes part of your character. Repeat it for a lifetime, and gratitude becomes the dominant color of your soul, visible in every word, gesture, and silence. Think of the stories we leave behind. Marcus Aurelius left the Meditations not because he planned to publish them, but because he dyed his soul daily with reflection. Epictetus left the reminder that freedom begins in the mind. Seneca left the vision of the mind as a sanctuary. Their words endure because their colors endured, and those colors spread to generations far beyond their own. Your own practice may not be written in a book, but it will be written in your actions. Every act of kindness, every patient response, every quiet moment of gratitude becomes a ripple of color reaching others. The transformation of your mind inevitably transforms the world around you. From here, let us look forward. Imagine 5 years of steady practice. Imagine a decade. Each day you have dipped your soul into the dye of positivity, resilience, and wisdom. Over time, the canvas of your life becomes brighter, deeper, more harmonious. You may still face storms, but you meet them with steadiness. You may still encounter darkness, but you carry your own light. The Stoics would remind us that no one can choose these colors for you. The world will try to stain your fabric with anger, fear, and despair. But the final choice rests within. To practice positive thinking is to reclaim sovereignty over the soul, to stand as the painter of your own life. There is beauty in this responsibility, for if you can transform your mind, you can transform your world. The colors of your thoughts ripple outward to family, friends, colleagues, and even strangers. A patient word at the right moment may change the course of someone's day. A resilient spirit may inspire others to rise from despair. A soul dyed with compassion may soften hearts hardened by struggle. Now pause for a moment and reflect. What colors do you wish to carry into tomorrow? What thoughts will you allow to seep into your soul? The practice of Stoicism invites you to choose with intention, to see every moment as a chance to shape the fabric of your being. The lesson is timeless. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Positive thinking does not erase reality, but it makes us capable of facing reality with courage. It does not blind us to hardship, but it gives us the strength to endure hardship without breaking. It does not guarantee a life free of pain, but it ensures a life full of meaning. And so, the work begins not in some distant future, but today. Take one thought of gratitude. Take one breath of patience. Take one moment of compassion. Dip the fabric of your soul in these colors, and repeat tomorrow and the day after. Over time, the colors will deepen, the soul will strengthen, and the world you inhabit will reflect the beauty you have cultivated within. This is the invitation of Marcus Aurelius and the legacy of Stoic philosophy. The soul is yours to shape, the colors yours to choose. Transform your mind, and in doing so, you transform your world. Marcus Aurelius left us more than the wisdom of an emperor. He left the reminder that the colors of our soul are ours to choose. Each day we have the power to decide whether we will be stained by anger and fear or strengthened by gratitude and compassion. The canvas of life is painted moment by moment, thought by thought. As you step forward, allow your mind to become the sanctuary where positive thinking takes root. Begin small, with patience and intention, and watch the hues of your soul grow brighter over time. If this reflection brought you peace, I invite you to subscribe to Stoic Dharma. Share your thoughts in the comments and continue this journey with us. In our next video, we will explore another timeless teaching. Powerful Stoic quote about fate and human destiny explained.
References 1. Aurelius, M. 2002. Meditations, G. Long, trans. Dover Publications. Point 2. Irvine, W. B. 2009. A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy. Oxford University Press. Point 3. Robertson, D. 2019. How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, The Stoic Philosophy of Marcus Aurelius. St. Martin's Press.